Welcome back. The torch for declaring Aswan as the capital of the African youth for 2019 was launched recently. The declaration and the decision to declare Aswan as the capital for African youth coincides with Egypt's presidency of the African Union for 2019 and Egypt's interest in youth activities. Arab and African Youth Platform will be held in Aswan from the 16th to the 18th of March 2019 to discuss the challenges facing the Arab and the African youth. To know more about this topic, we are joined by Mr. Tarek Sarhan, and he's a tourism expert. Hello, sir, and welcome to Nile Cruise.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
A very good afternoon, sir. Egypt has held international youth conferences for the past 2 years, of course. How important is conferences important for tourism in Egypt, and the value added by these conferences to our country?
Right. At first, let me send my condolences to those families who lost their members yesterday in Ramses railway station accident. We need to consider more about safety in our life. And then back to the subject of African. Of course, it's a value added, as you said.
Okay, sir, you mentioned, of course, the accident that took place yesterday. In light of such accidents that take place in our country, how will this affect tourism?
I don't think it will affect tourism that much. But of course, we have to consider about safety in our life details every day. We need to consider about those people who are assigned to drive trains mentally, because the person we saw yesterday was not mentally, I think, was not mentally prepared to...
Whose problem is this?
As we saw the media yesterday, the pilot of the train, of course, I think he's responsible, but we are not going ahead before the investigations, right? Then back to African and the summit and March. Of course, it's a value added to Egypt and the African nations as well. Sharing experiences between Egyptian youth and Africans. It's a very important thing concerning threats surrounding Africa. Water problems, energy, many things, of course, environment, of course, and Africa. We need to consider to create more awareness between the nations in Africa. It's a very important thing. And creating a network between Egyptians and Africans, of course, is a very important thing. To make connections with another African nations, it's very important for both of us, the Egyptians and the Africans as well.
Sir, why was Aswan be chosen to be the capital of the African youth for 2019? Why Aswan in particular?
By history, Aswan was the crossing point from Egypt to Africa. Even the name Aswan is the cross point. The meaning of the word Aswan, it's a cross point between Egypt and Africa. And Aswan is very near to Africa. Of course, we are the southern governorate in Egypt, and it's very near to Africa. I think if we succeeded to transfer Aswan into a gate to Africa, it would be very useful for both in Egypt and other African nations. This is very important, of course.
Mm-hmm. Sir, we had a very important leap that took place in tourism in 2017 and a large boom in 2018 when Egypt was visited by renowned foreign figures, of course, in different conferences that took places when they came to Egypt, especially to visit Egypt and meet President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and etc., etc. What were the most important figures that influenced tourism?
First of all, everyone is dreaming to visit Egypt. This is
everyone
is dreaming to visit Egypt and stand in front of the pyramids. This is the dream of humanity, I think.
Yes.
This is very important, of course. And many people visit Egypt 2-3 years, and it's a reflection to the peaceful situation in Egypt, regardless what happened here or there from terror accidents. But I think Egypt now is much safe than before from 2011. Now Egypt, thanks God, it's a safe country and it deserves to be visited.
Well, again, sir, who are the most important figures that influence and renowned figures that influence tourism when they come and visit Egypt?
I didn't get yours. I'm sorry.
Important figures, renowned, famous ones that came to Egypt and visited Egypt and made and influenced the idea of or spread the idea that come to Egypt and visit Egypt because Egypt is a safe and secure country that anyone can come over and visit at any time.
Of course, if famous people visited Egypt and put their photos beside the pyramid or anywhere else, of course, this is a propaganda to the country. And it helps, of course, the tourism industry in Egypt.
Okay, sir. Egypt has one of the most important countries in monuments and in history, and it has it all. But at the same time, you find that the neighboring countries here in the Arab region, the neighboring countries for Egypt, the number of tourists that visit them are more than Egypt. So what are the main factors that missing Egypt to attract more tourists?
We need to concentrate on touristic infrastructures. Like, for example, we have monuments, as you said now, a quarter of the monuments all over the world are in Egypt. But this is not enough, I think. I think we need to put more facilities to make Egypt, I always say this, make Egypt easy and reachable. Now the whole world is using internet and mobile applications, and they're getting their visas through the internet and applications and the mobile applications, right? Until the moment, it's not that easy to do this. I think if we transfer to electronic system, Egypt will be more visited by people.
Mm-hmm.
Sir, Egypt also opened in late January a new Sphinx International Airport, of course, about 12 kilometers away from the Great Pyramids of Giza, linking tourists' destination, northern and southern, the country via domestic flights, of course. How do you see such measures important for enhancing tourism?
Of course, it's very important when the airport is very near to the monuments area, especially in 2020, you are going to open the Grand Egyptian Museum. And instead of
what are we going to be opening in 2020?
The Egyptian Grand Museum.
Is it Egyptian Grand Museum?
Right. And the whole area now, the map of the area now is totally changing and on the way. It will make people, instead of, let me give you an example. From Cairo airport to the pyramids area, it takes 1 hour at least, or 1 hour and a half, if, right? And it takes much time. But if the Sphinx, the case of the Sphinx airport, in just 15 minutes, you will arrive the pyramids and the Grand Egyptian Museum, right? Make things easy to the people, because now all the touristic programs are the time of visit. Let's say it was not like before for one month. Now it's 1 week only. So the time for the tourists, the people who are visiting the country, is very short. So we need to save their time. Otherwise, we can get benefit from this. Saving time means that they will spend that time in visiting more areas. And Sphinx Airport is very near to Fayoum, which is 1 hour. Another treasure of Egypt, still hidden, right? And the Grand Egyptian Museum. Beside the Sphinx in October City, we have the golf courses. We can create another kind of tourism. It will change the map of tourism when the airport is fully working. I think it will help so much.
Whenever Egypt announces a new discovery, especially the pharaonic discoveries, whether in Aswan or in Luxor, or any new discoveries of a new monument, a mummy, one of the royal families, we find that abroad are making a big propaganda and a big fuss about the situation, and Egypt is not making that big attention to this great discovery. So how we could use such a discovery to make more propaganda about Egypt?
We need to do more documentary movies about the monuments discovered. We discovered, for example, maybe every week, we discover a new monument in Aswan, in Luxor, in Cairo, and wherever. But we are not making enough documentary movies about this. Meanwhile, the other abroad, let me say abroad, outside, they come to Egypt and make documentary movies. This creates more awareness about the country, right? We need to do more documentary movies about this. And one more thing, they discovered something, right? But we have to make the area around this prepared to accept tourism. We need infrastructure. for the areas like in Minya or Fayoum, for example. We need to do more work about this area.
Do the new archaeological announcements, sir, or discoveries, such as the announcement of the discovery of more than 40 mummies in ancient tombs in Minya, add new destinations to Egypt's tourism map?
Minya is another treasure of Egypt, by the way, same like Fayoum, right? And it's very important. Yes, every square meter in Egypt contains treasures, by the way. But the point is, I repeat again, and we need to do more infrastructure for this area. The people will come to visit the place, but they need toilets, restaurants, hotels, etc. This is very important to evaluate the area, right?
Okay, today we are in Prince Muhammad Ali Palace, and of course we have many palaces scattered across Egypt. These palaces are unique. And it's a unique piece of art, and it's unique in everything. By all means, even Abdin Palace is considered more important and more luxurious than the Élysée Palace in France. So, what about the tourists' interest in these part of history of Egypt? Do they come to visit these places, or they go to the pharaonic places?
They go to pharaonic places, of course, but the mistake goes to the travel agencies. They do not put these palaces, unique places,
on the list.
On the list.
So this is the point.
Yes, simply.
Yeah.
And by the way, Abdin Palace is the second biggest palace all over the world.
Yeah, I know.
Worth to say, it's very important palace, and worth a visit, of course. Same like this palace.
Yeah.
Of Crown Prince Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
Sir, the upcoming opening of the Grand Egyptian Museum in 2020, which will be the biggest in the world to display the artifacts of one civilization, is a key part of the Tourism Ministry's promotion plan. Could you tell us more about this, sir?
Of course, the Grand Egyptian Museum will help, of course, in tourism, because it will be the biggest. It will be the biggest simply, and contains 100,000 pieces. Would enhance, of course, the tourism movement, right? And the area, of course, not only the museum, the Grand Museum, the pyramids area now will belong to a management company to change the image about some negative images about the pyramids area. It will be changed very soon, as the new management will deliver will take the responsibility. It will help, of course, and as I mentioned before, not only the Grand Egyptian Museum, we need to create new programs to the people. Like, for example, the golf courses near the area. Fayoum, again, I repeat, Fayoum. And pyramids, of course, will be something else, and it will be deserved to be visited in this area. Of course, it will help.
Sir, if you had the chance to be a consultant to the Ministry of Tourism, what will be your first priorities to encourage tourism to come to Egypt?
Electronic tourism, electronic transactions, make Egypt easy and reachable. We should speak the language the world understands. Now, most of the tourists all over the world are young people, and they are using their mobile applications to visit any place in the world. We need to go as soon as possible to go to this electronic transaction in the touristic field. This is very important and urgent.
Sir, you're a tourism expert, of course. How do you see tourism in the year 2019? And which are the countries that are very keen on coming to Egypt and sightseeing, of course, all everything about Egypt and knowing more about Egypt? And what is the most important places that the tourism come putting in mind that they have to visit, of course, other than the pyramids?
Of course, cultural tourism, this is very important, and they come to visit the pyramids and Luxor and Aswan. This is concerning monuments. This is winter tourism. In summer tourism, we have Sharm el-Sheikh and we have Hurghada as well. Recently now, I heard that the Russian tourism started to come back to Egypt. We have very good number of Indians and Chinese They are visiting Egypt. Japanese returned again, and Americans returned again. Italians, Germans. Only now the British people, because of their government, they are not.
That is give them their time. They're gonna come eventually.
One day they will visit Egypt
Yeah.
again. This is a political issue,
Exactly.
not concerning the terror or whatever. They put in their media that Egypt is not safe. I speak especially about the British government. They consider that Egypt is not safe. No, it's not safe. It's very safe, Egypt. It's very safe.
So we can consider that the rate of tourism this year is increasing than the previous years.
I can tell you that there is no vacant room in hotels from 2018 until today.
So this year is how many percent we can consider tourism?
Should be 12 million. Should be 12 million by the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And it increased from last year, from 2017, 40%.
Mm-hmm.
And this reflects the peaceful situation of the country.
Okay.
Sir, Egypt is gaining back its pioneering role in Africa. Of course, Aswan is said to be the city of African youth. How does this have an impact on African tourism in Egypt?
African tourism, we can't create for us. We can create mutual programs between Egypt and Africa. Let me give you an example. Exploring the Nile. Why travel agency does not think about this? To explore the Nile between the Nile basin countries. It will be a win-win game for both nations, Egypt and other nations of the Nile basins. It will help, of course. It will help.
And who is responsible for propaganding for such an idea like you just mentioned now?
You.
No, there's still the social
Of
media.
course, travel agents, of course, are very important in this matrix.
So
We have
travel
to-
agencies should do special journeys to these places.
Yes,
of
because most of them, they concentrate only on cultural tourism, Luxor, Aswan, the classic tourism, or Hurghada. Why don't we think about something new, a new product to be produced to the people? It will help, of course, in making income to the country, in Egypt, and the other nations, of course. It's a win-win game for every nation will share.
Some of the complaints that we hear from tourists is that they cannot find a ticket to Egypt. It's fully booked sometimes in the season, of course, of tourism. So do you believe that we need to increase the number of flights for the airlines here in Egypt? Would this facilitate the flow of tourists to the country?
No doubt about this, of course. Before 2011, there was at least 15 flights from Cairo to Luxor or to Aswan. Now we have only 2-3 flights. Of course, there is no place to find now. Aviation and tourism are together. You cannot separate them. Especially that trains are not that up to the standard. We need to change this, to think about this, the train services, right? And to increase the number of flights are going domestic flights. This is very important, of course.
Sir, what do you think we need to do more and pay more effort to increase tourism in Egypt? You said that the rate of tourism is getting better, but what do you think we need to do more to enhance tourism in Egypt?
First, the electronic transactions make the country easy and reachable. The electronic visa. Let me give you an example. Russia and China are big nations, right? And it's not acceptable now. Although the whole world is using mobile applications to get their visas, and the person from the farthest point of Moscow has to go to the embassy in Moscow to take his visa. Of course, it will not help. But if we made it electronic visa and e-ticketing, it will help.
Sir, as a tourism expert, and now you're watched by tourists abroad, what you can tell them? What's the first thing when they come to Egypt? What is the first place that they have to visit?
Everybody's dreaming about the pyramids, but as I mentioned now, Fayoum is another treasure. It contains all decades of history. Minya as well, Luxor as well. We have many places. If by summer The leisure tourism is fantastic, and it's not comparable to any other place in the world. Within the next 2 years, we are going to have another city, Al Alamein City, New Alamein City, and the city would change the world touristic map, because it will be very near to Europe. In just 1 hour, you will arrive to Alamein, instead of 3 hours flying to Hurghada. And the weather, of course, in summertime in this area is wonderful. It will change the world touristic map in this area, of course, in a very near future.
Dr. Tarek Sarhan, Mr. Tarek Sarhan, a tourism expert. We thank you so much for joining us here in Nile Cruise, and thank you so much for enriching us with so much knowledge about tourism here in Egypt. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much, my pleasure.
Dear viewers, this was the segment of Nile Cruise. Stay with us. So we'll be back again with more about Al Manial Palace and more about every single thing related to Egypt. Stay with us and don't go away.